Welcome, folks. I'm Jabby Kaway, joined by Char Kirk.
What's up?
We just got done watching the first 2 episodes of Miss Marvel, and these are our initial thoughts off of watching it. And there's going to be no spoilers whatsoever, nothing specific about the show, just our feelings. I really, surprisingly liked it a lot, especially the first episode. The second episode I liked, but I didn't love it the way I loved the first episode. There was something about that was quite remarkable, so much so, and I know you've heard me say this before, but I really mean it. This is my favorite first episode out of a Marvel show so far, at least from Disney+.
It's like they keep upping it.
Yeah.
You know, like it keeps getting better and better and better with each subsequent show, it feels. You know? But that first one is a banger, you guys.
Yeah, there's something about the way that it was directed and acted, and I mean, it all coalesced in a very beautiful way that I haven't seen out of any of the other Marvel shows, at least from the first episode so far. It's like between the acting, the storytelling, I hesitate to say this, but the representation of it, because I don't like to focus on representation.
I know.
And wokeism and stuff like that. I try to always ignore that part and go, well, how's the story? And in this particular case, the story's great, the acting's great, what it is talking about is awesome, and I think the visual effects are pretty cool too. Like, I think all around, it's got that very cinematic level, because one of the things that was talked about recently was in She-Hulk, the CGI looks kind of funky, and people are like, well, it's still being rendered, oh, it's not a movie.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, none of that is problematic here. All of it is like, all of this looks great to me, and I like the way it's shot. One of the things I called out while watching it was that it's shot with anamorphic lenses. I don't know if they do that with other Marvel shows, but it's the first time I've noticed how just like filmic it looks, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And that first episode really does set up the show with the tone and how fun it is, how cute it is, how whimsical. I felt like it really stayed true to the comics in that sense. Like it kind of took the source material and translated it onto the screen so well. Like I had a smile on my face pretty much the entire time through that first episode. It was so lovely.
Yeah, I was kind of half expecting like Juno 2.0 or something like that, but even more juvenile, like even more younger in terms of its like goal and target. I was not expecting it to hit me, to relate to me, to be something that resonates with me at all. I was just expecting to be like, well, that's cool. I guess I have to watch this in order to stay updated with the MCU and understand like how everything fits together. Also, I do reviews on this channel, so I have to watch this. So I was a little bit like cautiously optimistic going into the show, thinking that this is not aimed at the jabbies. This is not aimed at the dudes. But I go into the show and I'm like, yo, I love this shit. Like, this is great. I think that just all around, I don't know, it hit me in a very surprising way, and it actually made me emotional at one point. One of the things I commented about the show was that there's very little fat, especially in that first episode. It's like it moves along. What also helps that is the direction, but I forgot the director's name. They did Bad Boys 3, which I didn't love, but I think that they did a fantastic job. Like the marriage of those directors with the producers at Marvel did a fantastic job at telling a phenomenal story, at least in that first episode, that really moves.
I think it's Adil and Bilal are their names.
The second episode doesn't have that same momentum to it, but it's still telling a very cool story. One of my concerns that we kind of brought up is that, there will be people who are like, oh, it's too woke. And I watch and I go, I don't think it is. I think that it does a very good job of establishing representation without being overbearing about it.
I think they do a really good job of creating characters that we instantly care about. We've seen 2 episodes and already I'm like, I care about everyone.
I'm trying so hard to walk this line of not telling you guys anything while telling you something. So another thing that was great about this is the development of the characters and the development of her as a hero. Generally speaking, it feels like those things move way too quick. Talking about stuff being like no fat, that part of a story usually doesn't have any fat. Usually they try to just get through that, just like it's a montage.
Yeah.
One of my references is Iron Man. He goes through his thing of finding, coming out of the cave, he has to go through his process of like testing out these different things. It's a montage of mistakes until he finally figures it out. Oh, this is okay. Now he's Iron Man. Whereas in this show, it's a show about her developing not just as a hero, but as a person.
Yeah, as a human, as a teenager, as a girl, as a woman, you know, she's coming into her own, and it's so fun and interesting to watch. And I do have to give props to Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan. From the first moment you see her on the screen, you're like, I like this girl.
Yes.
Like, she's just so cute, she's charming, she's got a really fun attitude. She just like plays all of those nuances of the character so well. I couldn't help falling in love with her from the very first moment they showed her on the screen. I was like, yes, this is right. This is the Kamala that I read in the comics, and I just felt like she did the character justice.
Yeah, Iman Vellani does a very good job of doing this balancing act of doing the whimsical thing, like filling in that role for the whimsical storytelling, but also keeping it grounded.
Yes, there is that huge element of fantasy and fun, especially with the way that they've shot the show. And
you almost said movie. It's like a movie.
It does feel like a movie. Yeah, I nearly said that. But like the way they've shot it, and especially establishing that tone in the first episode, like it feels so colorful and so full of life. It's like a comic book come to life. And so she balances treading that line really well with being like, oh, it's like a comic book fantasy, to like, no, this also feels like very real life at home drama or dramedy. Yeah.
One of the things that we watched most recently was Turning Red. In Turning Red, the character, also a female, also Asian, her becoming this like kind of big puffy character is supposed to be sort of representative of puberty and the coming of age thing. And I think that comparing these two, while that might be a wildly weird comparison for a lot of you guys once you watch the show, this does such a better job at making her discovery of herself analogous to just being a kid growing up.
Right.
I think it does a much, much better job than Turning Red did, because here it's like I can see the linking between the two. I can't be specific about anything. But there was like a moment we saw in episode 2, a bathroom scene. It's kind of representative of what it's like to be a girl and like, or just a teenager in general.
Yeah.
You know, of experiencing certain things, and you're like, oh gosh, and you're trying to just hide because you feel like the whole world is paying attention to you. In this instance, they would be. But anyway, my point being is it kind of is analogous to just being a teenager growing up.
Yeah.
And between the two, I'm like, yeah, this is what Turning Red should have done for me.
Yeah, and there's also loads of small things, like just in the dialogue and everything, that I felt was just so good, because it felt like a proper nod to the culture, you know, to Pakistani culture, to South Asian culture in general, you know, and it didn't feel, at least for me, and, you know, obviously I'm coming at this as someone who is kind of removed from that, even though I am half Asian, but I'm not Pakistani. I'm not South Asian, even though like we know a lot about, you know, the culture and everything. So maybe we're like a little bit closer. But I felt like the way they integrated that into the characters and the script and the story, I thought that was really well done, because it didn't feel like too, you know, put upon, like it wasn't shoved in there.
I feel like the jury's still out on that one. One of the things you had mentioned was that it feels relatable. Like, it feels like something that could be relatable for a lot of people, or most people. Like, one of your comments was that we sort of had a conflict about. I use conflict, that's not really like a conflict, but like, just a disagreement, was that you're like, oh, I feel like this is relatable for everybody. And I said, I don't think it is. For those of you who have no idea about this, I have another YouTube channel that is mostly focused on an Indian audience. We look at stuff for that Indian audience. Sometimes it integrates Marvel stuff and DC stuff and, you know, big movies like Mission Impossible, but most of the time it's focused on like Indian specific shows, movies, comedy, sketches, etc. Achara picks up on stuff a lot faster than I do. You sort of integrate it like a chameleon right away.
Right.
I have a harder time with that. I only speak English and bad English. That's a quote from The Fifth Element. Anyway, I have a harder time absorbing stuff as quickly as you do, but what that affords me is the ability to see what, I guess, America sees and what, like, I don't know what the other class, like India sees or Asians see. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so for me, watching the show, I'm like, I feel like this is a part where Americans, your average American, will stumble or be confused. And I feel like this is something that the Asian audience is going to be like, or at least Indians and Pakistanis will be like, oh, I know what that is. I get that.
I think what I was trying to say, and maybe I didn't articulate this well enough in our episode 2 review and discussion, the thing that is relatable is that the growing up.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You know?
Oh, certainly.
Like
yeah.
that. That is something that we can relate to, even if we're not part of the diaspora.
Again, I half agree with you. Because there are things that this character encounters, and I'm like, your average American doesn't experience. There's stuff that this character is scolded about. I'm like, I feel like most Americans don't know what that experience is like.
But saying that, though, I think it's great that we have that representation, because even if, you know, that seems alien to you and like you don't really understand why her parents are super strict like that or whatever, you can still love the characters and watch what's happening through her eyes and empathize.
Absolutely.
You know? So it's you know, even if you're not part of the culture, you're learning about the culture, which
I can agree with that.
Fantastic.
No, I totally 100% agree with that. But I think there's a separation between being able to empathize and being able to relate. We're getting into semantics now, I'm sure. But my point is, like, okay, yes, that's why I half agree. I'm like, I feel like maybe most people watching this will be able to enjoy it, but not everybody will be able to relate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I got too excited and made a broad statement statement,
Yeah.
but I am really hoping that when you guys get the opportunity to watch this,
Yeah.
that you will enjoy this as much as we did, because we had
I
a
enjoyed,
blast.
especially the first episode, man. I enjoyed the shit out of that. But I feel like the episode 2 had a tall order for me because I'm like, this first episode was so amazing. Like that feeling that I had watching, I'm like, whoa, this is like hitting all the beats that I need out of this. I don't think episode 2 could have ever measured up to that. Like the expectation was just too high in my heart. But it was still fun.
It's a very different vibe. You'll see when you guys watch it.
Yeah, do check it out. It's a really, really good show. I strongly recommend it. Like I said at the beginning of this, that first episode is my favorite first episode for a Disney Plus series so far. That's it for now, you guys. Thanks again for hanging out. I'm Jabby Kawai. This is
Achara Cook.
Peace out.